Hello, and welcome to our Entrepreneurship Career Pathway Information Session. My name is Mary Beulah, and I am the director of Erie Together, which is a countywide movement that's heavily focused on helping more students become successful adults. Through my role, I facilitate the Erie County Career Pathways Alliance, which is a group of school districts, employers, universities, and workforce developers, all working together to help students prepare for future careers and better meet employers' needs. Tonight is our 6th information session, each focusing on a different career pathway. Thank you for joining us tonight. And for students who couldn't participate, we're recording this session to make it available after the event is over. Our goal for tonight is to introduce you to entrepreneurship and help you understand what it takes to become a successful entrepreneur. And we've structured this session pretty tightly. We're going to start with a high-level presentation on entrepreneurship from Dr. Rebecca Stein, an educator, businesswoman, and entrepreneur herself. We'll then turn to our panelists with a series of questions we've developed and others you submit. If you have questions you'd like to pose to the panelists, please type them into the chat so we can raise them for you. Now, please understand that if you're here and you can hear us, your technology is working. Here are some additional things we want to know and want to make sure you know to help ensure that tonight's session goes well. First of all, panelists, please make sure your camera is turned on and your microphone is muted, and remember to unmute yourself when you're speaking. Students and families, your cameras and microphones have been disabled, so when you want to ask a question, you'll use the chat function. And here's how the chat works. The chat feature is in the main bar at the bottom of your screen, and it's labeled chat. When you have a question, please type your chat in there. If you want to direct your question to a certain panelist, please include their name. But if your question is for anyone, just type it in and we'll take it from there. And finally, we have an hour set aside for this session. And if we run out of time, we will forward your questions to the panelists after the event and get those answers to you. So one last thing before we begin, we have Jennifer Ponzer, who is the director of our Career Street program, on the session with us tonight. Jen, if you want to give a little wave.
Hi, everyone.
Jen is going to be managing the chat tonight, and she's going to make sure everything's going okay with the Zoom. So Jen, thanks for everything you did to help organize the event and to support it tonight as we get going. All right, so that's it in terms of housekeeping, and we're ready to get started. So speakers, what I'd like you to do first is tell us your name, title, and a little bit about your background and your entrepreneurial ventures. And I'm going to call on each one of you just so that we can make sure things keep moving and we're not talking over each other. And I'm going to start with Chuck. So Chuck, can you go ahead?
Sure. First of all, thanks, Mary and Jennifer, for inviting me and putting on this program. It's exciting to be here. So my name is Chuck Peters, and I am the managing partner of Altair Real Estate Services. We're a real estate developer and manager. As we progress, I'll share a little bit more about that. But I got my entrepreneurial start when I was a high school student. I liked to race little bicycles, and my family couldn't buy them for me. And I said, well, I'm going to figure out a way to make enough money to make that happen. And I started DJing at our local, my school, and then other schools. And by the time I was a senior in high school, I had about 12 employees. And that really introduced me to entrepreneurship. And I went on to Gannon and ended up in business with a professor of mine. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but that's kind of how I got my entrepreneurial start and who I am. So thank you.
Thanks, Chuck. Okay, Dr. Nancy Morris.
Hi, welcome. Thank you for having me. Again, my name is Dr. Nancy Morris. Full-time, I'm an assistant professor in the School of Education at Gannon University. And that is actually where I got my start as being an entrepreneur. I created and launched a product, Effortless Art Crayons, through a research and service learning project through Gannon. And I have them right here. So I'm an accidental entrepreneur in that the product idea sort of launched into a company, which my husband and I started, called Two Sparrows. Since the launch of the crayons, our company has an online marketplace where we sell other people's products. We have design and development services that my husband heads up, and we've started doing social media marketing for other companies. So it's kind of product idea expanded to larger business.
Thanks, Nancy. Rob.
Yes, hello, I'm Rob Martz. I have a few, 3 different jobs, I guess. So I'm co-owner of Room 33 Speakeasy with my wife, Rebecca, here in the bottom right corner, left corner of my screen. I work for a defense contractor, small business out of Dayton, Ohio. And I also am the CFO of a small business that does drone agricultural releases of insects of all things. So that's probably the one I'll talk about the most today, but it's a little unique and fun to talk about. So I appreciate all the work done to get this together, and great set of panelists. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, John.
Hi, thanks for having me. My name's John Nowakowski. I am the owner-operator of Bayfront Glass, LLC, a glass-only recycling company in Erie, PA. My background, kind of entrepreneurship, started really young. My grandfather is the CEO of a company here in Erie. I started kind of diving into entrepreneurship when I was in college. I helped found the Innovation Commons lab up at Barron. So I helped people develop products, and I kind of saw the spark in other people and saw a niche and kind of went for it after doing a bunch of research. So that's kind of where I kind of jumped in.
Thanks, John. Jason.
Hello, thank you. My name is Jason Wolfe. I was a video game developer for many years, but my wife, Wei Shin, and I would often kick around ideas and build things here and there. We came upon a good one, the sleep phones, headphones and a headband intended to help you sleep. And we formed Acoustic Sheep to bring it to the world, bring the product to the world. We created a whole new product category, and we're very proud of that. And I've been a co-founder and CTO for more than a decade now.
Thanks, Jason. And Dr. Rebecca Stein.
Yes, thanks for having me. Again, I'm Rebecca Stein. I'm actually pretty multifaceted in my career track right now. I am also co-founder with my husband, Rob, for Room 33. I recently launched a product called Blind Tiger Spirit-Free Cocktails. So that's a business that I'm working to get off the ground. And I work at the Erie Day School in both marketing and advancement, and I teach entrepreneurship there and at the universities locally. My entrepreneurial background actually started later in life. I didn't know I wanted to be an entrepreneur until probably about maybe 10 years ago. I always thought I was going to be the second in command type of person. And I just ultimately decided that I wanted to manage and have my own thing, and it just kind of blossomed from there. So I'll talk a little bit more about it as we move forward. Thank you.
Great, Rebecca, thanks. And we are going to start right with you. So could you please describe for us what entrepreneurship is and talk about things students should understand if they want to become a successful entrepreneur?
Absolutely. So the classic definition of an entrepreneur is really someone that starts a business or businesses in hopes of making a profit. Essential ingredients I find entrepreneurialism include the willingness to take risks, and this is in terms of time, career, or finances, and to have the creative skill to find necessary resources such as talent and funding to be able to build a solid business plan, and the vision to recognize opportunity where others see chaos or confusion. One of the things I think are key to the entrepreneurial arena is the character traits and what I actually really call the entrepreneurial mindset. And it's something that I teach. This is my dog in the background. So if someone would like to come get him, that would be great, her. So these are a set of attitudes, skills, and behaviors that will help entrepreneurs to succeed academically, personally, and professionally. And they don't necessarily need to be applied to starting a business, but some of the best entrepreneurs embody these attributes, right? These include, taking initiative, critical thinking, creativity and innovation, empathy, risk-taking is obviously a key one, adaptability, grit, and problem solving. So these are a set of skills that enable people to identify and make the most of opportunities, overcome and learn from setbacks, and succeed in a variety of settings. I think one of the other things we could talk about today is kind of how one becomes an entrepreneur too. So I think, and when I talk to my students, this is something that I go over a lot with them. It's really just, you want to find the right business or the right idea for you. You don't necessarily have to have an extreme skill set in the area, but you need to know how to find the resources to help you develop what you want to do. You need to determine if you need a specific background or education or expertise. And if you do, then you need to pursue it or find a partner that already has it. You're going to want a mentor in the process because the truth is you don't know what you don't know. And then you need to start to plan it. So there is a lot of research and requires a very solid business plan. And I know from experience, the plan can be tedious and challenging, but it's necessary. It helps you, the entrepreneur, determine the business focus, the market, and helps to secure funding or acquire new investors. I'm of the mindset myself that, especially since starting a business, I believe that starting a business is not a linear journey. So business plans, I don't think have a defined set of pages that actually need to belong to them, but they need to include basic things: the purpose and value of your business, the description of your target market. You shouldn't want to sell to everyone, your sales projections, and your competition. So even if you don't think you have competition, right? When I started my own restaurant, I had so much to learn. I had a lot of experience in various parts of the industry, but I had never managed a restaurant before. So I had to hire somebody that could in order to be successful at it. And I had to write a plan and conduct a lot of research. And thankfully, there are a ton of resources for this. So, and here's a number that I want everybody to remember: 90% of all startups fail. There's a variety of reasons for this, but should you decide to start a business at some point in life, you'll need to recognize the risk that goes with it. And you should be able to embrace failure. I believe it's a great life lesson, and it's something that we learn from the most. So I can continue to go on. I don't know how we are on time, but if I just want to say, like, the greater the risk, the greater the reward. And although the opposite holds true, the greater the risk, the greater the potential failure, taking risks is really what life is all about. And I encourage anyone that's listening to this to think entrepreneurially, no matter what you pursue. So to think critically, to take risks, to be determined and patient in the process, and look at things outside the box. You can do this in any facet of your life, no matter what career you pursue, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. You can develop things that aren't necessarily tied to actually, and you can become more entrepreneurial. The reward will pay off. So thanks.
Thanks, Rebecca. Jen, do we have any questions in the chat for Rebecca?
No, there aren't any questions right now, Mary.
Okay, great. Thanks, Rebecca. So we're going to move into the other panelists then. So Chuck, I'm going to start with you. And my first question for you is, what was the driving force behind you becoming an entrepreneur? And how can a young person figure out if becoming an entrepreneur is right for them?
Great question, and it's pretty easy for me to answer. It was my dad. My father worked for a local company called Zurn Industries, no longer headquartered here in Erie, and he was in the 1980s, quote, right-sized out of that job at Zurn Industries, and rather than be down on himself or down on the community, he decided that he was going to do something else and started his first business, which was an insurance agency. And so I grew up watching that happen. And so I think when I get to talk to other entrepreneurs, which I get to do a lot because of some volunteer work that I do with the Ben Franklin Technology Partners, which invests in technology companies, I feel like I had a bit of an easier go of it because of having a father that became an entrepreneur. And like Rebecca said, he became an entrepreneur a little later in life, but then he went on to start investing in real estate. And that sort of ties to how I ended up in that business. But I had a second really big driving force behind how I thought about entrepreneurs and wanted to become an entrepreneur. And I mentioned it in my introduction, and that was AJ Maselli, who's was a professor at Gannon. And when I was a student there, he was starting an internet company called ErieNet, which was Erie's first local internet provider. And I was a student, and he said, listen, why don't you come do this with me? And at the time, I was kind of dreading getting a job. I was close to graduating, and I'm like, boy, I don't know if I fit into corporate culture. This sounds kind of fun. And of course, AJ's answer was kind of like, look, I don't have any money for you, but you can come and help me grow this company. And we had a great time doing it in the middle 1990s, and we sold that in 1999. And it was just a great experience. And so I would encourage students to always think about their teachers and professors once you get on to college. If you choose that route, think about those people that can help you along the way, because it's really amazing how people will help you if you ask. And if you sort of make an impression on them, they'll often invite you in. And so my dad and AJ were probably the two largest driving forces in me becoming an entrepreneur. And I guess for the second part of the question, Mary, it's, how does a young person determine if it's right for them? I don't know that that's quite as easy to answer. I think that every one of the entrepreneurs that I'm sharing this panel with would tell you that it's a lot of work. Unlike a job where you oftentimes get to finish at the end of the day and go home and not think about it, I would suspect that by show of a nod, everybody on this call that's an entrepreneur would say they think about it well beyond 5 p.m. And so I think that, it's like anything else in life. There's a lot of choices that are in front of you as a young person. And I think you need to, if you're thinking of being an entrepreneur, I think you need to think about sort of what kind of work experience do you want to have. And if you feel like a self-starter, and you feel like someone that's got ideas, and you feel like someone that could grow a business, then it's probably the right choice for you. There's nothing wrong with not being an entrepreneur though either. And I think that when I was, sort of starting in business, it wasn't really promoted. I didn't get any education formally on what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Sessions like this didn't exist. And it was kind of like, you were always taught, go get a job. There's nothing wrong with that. Our companies in total employ a couple of hundred people, and we need people that want to work for an entrepreneur. And so don't feel bad if that isn't where your mindset is, that you want to, go kind of put it all on the line the way entrepreneurs do. So I think that you have to really, in those moments when you're being quiet and honest with yourself, you have to ask those questions. Do I have that desire to go do something on my own?
Chuck, I'm going to ask you a follow-up question, just because I met you back right after I think you sold ErieNet, because I was working at Penn State and I was helping businesses utilize technology to improve their operations. And I just remember there being such an energy around you and the things you were doing, because it felt to me like anywhere there was a network that was somehow tied to the things you were interested in, you were engaged in it. I saw you everywhere, right? I saw you in Harrisburg. I saw you locally. I saw you everywhere, right? So what sort of perspective do you have for people who have an entrepreneurial spirit to get engaged in other things beyond simply the idea or the business that they really want to pursue? Does that question make sense?
I think it does. I mean, networks are so important. And it's interesting because as I heard, my fellow fellow panelists introduce themselves to each other. I don't know Jason, but I know Jason. Ben Franklin invested in his company, so I know him that way. I know him because he volunteered to do some really interesting art for us at Knowledge Park, which is a real estate project that our company manages. I know of John because the gaming authority that I was involved with put some money into the beehives and the Innovation Commons at Penn State. And so I've sort of followed his career from afar. Jennifer and I spoke about how, we have a mutual friend that introduced us years ago over some real estate matters, and Rebecca and Rob, we've chatted, I think, since Rebecca first started thinking about Room 33, and she looked at a location that we were involved with. And so, it's so, when you talk about that, kind of seeing me out and about, I could say the same thing for everyone on this panel. And I think that, a lot of people, and you probably at that time thought, well, Chuck's a real extrovert. I'm really not. I've always had to work at that. I like quiet time to think and write and be creative and do those things. But if you're going to be an entrepreneur, I think it's pretty important to be involved with the community. And the community in my case, because I was selling a local service to local people, meant being very active in Erie, the city, and Erie, the county, and Pennsylvania, the region. And that's why you would see me in Harrisburg doing things. But I think that if you're Rebecca and you're doing your non-alcoholic drink mixers, her community may be broader than that, and she may have to get involved in the food and beverage trade associations and start showing up at those meetings. And so that's a typical long-winded Chuck Peters answer to a simple question. Networking is important, and you need to put yourself out there.
Okay, thank you, Chuck. I appreciate that. Would any of the other panelists like to comment on any of that before we move into the next question? Going once. Okay. All right. I'm going to move into the next question then. Thanks, Chuck. Nancy, the next question is going to be for you. How did the idea for your business and your products come about?
Sure. So the crayons came about through, actually, they were based off of my experience as a special education teacher. So I had this idea for an adaptive crayon probably 10 years ago when I was teaching in the field as a special education teacher. So the best products come out of, they're derived from a need you see with your customers, with your clients, with your community, something. So the best kind of product should solve a problem of some kind. And the problem for me was that the tools and materials my students were using weren't accessible for them. They had fine motor needs or difficulty using standard crayons, and it was affecting them being able to be inclusive and do their work. And I knew there had to be a better way. I was adapting and trying to make makeshift products for them with what I had, and it just wasn't effective. But at that time, I really didn't think about creating a product or doing something, I didn't feel like I had a capacity to do that. So fast forward 10 some years later, I'm in higher education. I have all these resources around me, and I think, I think I want to take a go at this and try to figure out how to make this. Long story short, leveraging resources in Gannon's community and in the Erie community, leveraging therapists, engineers, we came together and were able to create and design and manufacture a new adaptive crayon. And so it ended up, we had this great idea, we manufactured them, it was a big community effort. And my husband, we realized that this was a patentable product. And so it kind of, something that came out of an idea that I just wanted to do to actually donate it as a service, all of a sudden transformed into, we can patent this. Oh, maybe we should do something with this. We should create a company. We should definitely create a company and start selling these. And it's something that came out of a need where I was trying to do good because I knew this was a gap in the market for my students, turned into a business. And as probably many of us can, understand, you just sort of all of a sudden learn how to create websites and do marketing and do all this kind of stuff yourself. My husband and I, our background is in business, but I have the background in education. He has the background in engineering. And then you just kind of go from there and you make it work. And like Rebecca was saying, you find the people who can do that and the resources and or you learn and you figure it out. And that's sort of what being an entrepreneur is about, is that, being wanting to and ready and available to learn and to grow and to gain new skill sets. And so I guess to kind of sum up my long-winded answer is that the best kind of products came out of a need that I saw, and I just wanted to solve that problem and fill that gap.
Thanks, Nancy. And Jason, I saw you nodding your head. So I think I'd like to pose the same question to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we have very much the same drive. When the question comes up, my pat answer is always not sleeping, for why we made the headphones to help you sleep, right? We had this, my wife in particular would be on call as a physician, and it's hard to get back to sleep when something suddenly brings you to a state of alertness, right? So we had this really defined need for ourselves, and we built it for ourselves, right? And then we started to think others might like it, and we're just a lot of genuine interest, right? I mean, that they sold themselves. Other people had the same problem, right? And I think if you have a need and you have a good solution for it, it's probably the gentlest way to come into starting a venture like we did. It's probably not the only way to do it, but that works for us. So if you can find that, have a problem and solve it.
So you both talked a little bit, you saw the need, you thought about how you could solve it, you solved it for yourself, and then you made it a business. So I'm going to ask another question that I haven't posed to you prior to this. How did you find the resources that you needed to find to help you do the kinds of things you didn't know how to do? Right. So Nancy, you mentioned some of those things. You had a team again, and you had your husband and his expertise, but there were some things that you just didn't know how to do. How did you find people to help you?
So we started trying to leverage as many community resources as we could. So first it took searching and finding where do you go to find business help and support in your community. We worked with the SBDC initially in the beginning,
which is the
Small Business Development Center. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And so we were able to work with their coaches and their consultants initially to help us develop kind of a framework initially for a business plan. They did evaluation of our website, ideas for marketing, and things of that nature. We worked through the Beehive system, the different nodes, and we worked with different universities and different college students. And they did some graphic design and branding work for us. They did some market research for us. So we started trying to look through what's available as far as resources and expertise in the community first. And just working through that, we again found some networks of people. We are working with Ben Franklin and Brian Slaywin. He's been a great asset and resource to us to help connect us with those people. So it is important that, you find that as you work with one group of people or one resource in the community, they can connect you with somebody else. Oh, and they know this person. And so you start kind of building out your network that way. And then, kind of, I guess, goes from there.
Thanks, Nancy. Jason, did you want to add to that?
We spoke to just about every one of those, right? We looked for any service we could find, talk to as many folks as we could, and it just pick up a bit here, a bit there. I also find that, as I do a lot of research online for my previous career. I found that a lot of those the same way we find out like technical information is actually very useful for finding business information and things we had to know. It's surprising what you can find, particularly online.
Do you mind if I add one thing to that really quick? It's just to piggyback off of what you said, Jason, is that there's a ton of people out there that are sharing information. There's people in every single discipline or industry I think you can name that are educating over social media or educating and putting out content out there. So we've done a lot of just reading books, listening to podcasts, finding people that are sharing their content online. And that's been just very helpful and informative to us too.
We tried to think of ourselves as students in any context as we could.
Great, thank you. Do any of the other panelists want to add to that before we move on? Okay, all right, so we're going to move into John next. John, here's my question for you. What steps did you have to take to launch your business, and how did you secure the funding you needed?
Well, that's the fun one, funding. A lot of the funding is actually from me. I'm still I'm still kind of in the funding time. Even though I'm bringing in product and moving stuff out, it's still a work in progress. But really, a lot of it was just from the beginning. It's research. When I first started out getting into this business, I was still in a college mindset where I was still doing research papers and doing research for other entrepreneurs in my job that I was doing. So I kind of went down the avenues that I already kind of had to explain to or had at my disposal to kind of do things. So just kind of pushed there. I've poked at the normal kind of routes, but my business is in a weird space. It isn't a normal service like a restaurant or something. It isn't a brick and mortar shop that you can go buy things at. It's not something you can do online. It's residential or a commercial service that's something that everybody needs, but not everybody wants. And that's where it kind of comes in, because people pay for things they want, not always what they need. Thing.
So remind us again how you decided to pursue that particular business, the glass recycling. What made you decide to do that?
Well, I've recycled my entire life. It was always kind of a way to, get a little extra money for going for a vacation or put gas in the boat or do something. Working with entrepreneurs, I saw the spark that some people had towards certain ideas. And when I heard in September of 2018 that glass was being pulled from recycling across the city and all over the place, locally, that just stuck in my head. And I started doing the research, and I started looking at, okay, if Waste Management or the city or whoever is hauling doesn't want it, what can it be used for, and how can it be recycled properly, and where's the missing link in the chain? So I did the research. I found papers written by people in different universities. I found different businesses that had been trying to do it. Got as much as I could together and started exercising my networks at Barron, and going through the Innovation Commons and the Beehive network to kind of do some things. Used Mercyhurst for not a feasibility study, but a market research study. That was actually one of their first formal papers they did was mine, just to say, okay, your competition is just people putting it in the trash. How can you make an attractive way to kind of entice businesses and people to want to recycle?
So again, it's something you were passionate about personally. You've recycled your whole life. You saw a new need that was created because the city and other places stopped recycling. You had to put your own resources into it to get it off the ground, right? And that's typical, isn't it? I mean, isn't it typical that you oftentimes have to put a lot of your own resources behind a company whenever you're first starting? So those are the kinds of things, again, that seem to be similar themes that are running through this. Now, John, how long has the business been up and running?
The LLC was filed in June of 2019. So okay. It's just coming up on 2 now, here in the next little bit. But really it was that summer. Zabawa, the Polish festival, was kind of like the real get out and, you know, hit the public, as well as doing a bunch of pop-up events that year. You know, just trying to get out in the community. 2020, I took full ownership of the business and I started expanding all of my personal drop-offs, the color sorted collections, so working with organizations in the community, as well as a few municipalities. And I'm still pushing on that right now to try and do things.
Okay. All right. Jen, do we have any questions for John before I move on to Rob? Okay, Rob, I'm going to ask you the same question. I'm not sure, you've got a lot of businesses, right? So I'm not sure sort of how you want to approach this, but what steps did you have to take to launch your business and how did you secure the funding you needed?
Yep, so I have a lot of businesses and a lot of answers. So that's a great
and we have a lot of time.
So. Yes, so I came up with 4 main ways. So just like John mentioned, just like you hinted on at the end there, the number 1 way is you have to fund it yourself. So I'm one that's pretty fiscally conservative in my personal life. So I like to save money and put a little away each month. So when even coming right out of college, I started saving, and that allowed me to have some money set aside. So when you do want to do something, you don't have to rely on somebody else. So almost not everybody, but a vast majority of the time, you're going to have to put in something of your own. So it's important to start when you're young and start putting a little money away. So if you don't want to work for somebody, you can help fund yourself at the beginning. The second major way is friends and family. In every business that we started, we have gotten my first business, we got $2,000 from my parents to build our first drone. We showed the drone. This was when drones were not very common at all. We showed the $2,000 drone to the Department of Agriculture, and it got them excited and gave us enough that instilled this passion that they wanted to look at this, which leads me to the third option, which is the government. There's a vast amount of opportunity in government funding for small businesses, especially if you are doing something engineering or cutting edge. So we got a small grant to go look at how this can impact the future of the Department of Agriculture. And then the fourth option is always loans. So for Room 33, we got a small business loan from a local, regional bank. So we also brought our own money. We brought a little bit of friends and family money, and most of it was derived from a loan though. So you need to really get creative, like John said, and attack it in multiple different ways. But funding is the absolute most important thing.
So Rob, I'm really intrigued by the whole drone business. And if you could talk a little more about that. So, and the thing that really sort of hit me when you just said that is you built a $2,000 drone and you showed it to the Department of Agriculture and you had a conversation with them. How do you open a door to talk with a federal agency like that? I mean, how did you go? What steps did you take to even get credibility to be able to open those doors?
In this case, it's like Chuck was saying, it was networking and connection. So the CEO of our business happened to previously work, and it's kind of what Jason's saying and John's saying and Nancy's saying and Rebecca. our CEO happened to work at this location throughout college. So he knew these people. He knew once we decided drones were the way we wanted to go, he thought, well, these people have a problem and this might help them solve it. So that's what as an entrepreneur, you always need to be determining where are the problems and who has them and how can I solve them for a cheaper price than somebody else is solving them currently. So this organization released millions and millions of insects. This small part of the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, released millions and millions of insects every week. And they did so with Cessnas that are, classic crop dusting aircraft. They did this every week for years. They're very expensive. And actually, what most people don't think about, I definitely didn't, is they're very dangerous. When you have to fly low and slow, that's bad for an airplane. So they actually had 2 crashes where they had pilots that lost their lives. So this was a big deal. And we said, look, we can do this, and then you never have to worry about that issue ever again.
Wow. Okay. All right. Other panelists, do you want to comment on any particular steps that were key to getting your business off the ground, or how you secured funding, maybe in ways that we haven't heard about to this point?
Yeah, I could say it may not be the solution for everybody or the right approach for everybody, but we always looked at it as our entertainment. We were going to, rather than investing in this thing, we're going to be doing something, right? So if we could find the entertainment value in in coming up with the products, putting them together and building the company, it didn't seem like an expensive thing.
The only thing I would add is that, I think a lot of entrepreneurs or folks that have an idea, a dream, a vision of something that they want to do, allow sort of the fear of having the money, raising the money, getting the money to be able to move forward, stop them from pursuing that dream. And I would just, as I think about, we're talking to 8th through 12th graders who are probably saying, wow, this all sounds really cool, but who's going to give me money for my idea? And I think that I would just encourage any of the students that are thinking about something entrepreneurial, do what Nancy said, and I think Jason said the same thing. Go to the SBDC, talk to Brian at Ben Franklin. Their job is to help entrepreneurs. Our community, we all live in Erie. Our community needs that entrepreneurial spirit. It's what made this community. It's what makes most communities. And so there are folks whose job it is to help new entrepreneurs, whether it's someone young and right out of school, or whether it's someone that's coming out a little later. The folks at the SBDC, the folks at Ben Franklin, the folks at the chamber, the folks at the Redevelopment Authority. There's all kinds of people that will talk to you. Now, not all of them are going to be as open-minded as others, and you've got to be a little prepared for the fact that the first time you ask, you might not get the answer you want. You have to think about that. But don't let the fear of financial resources stop you from pursuing an idea, because what Jason did or what Nancy did in creating a product, it was certainly some money to do that and to get it to scale and to production, but to come up with the idea that they could sell to potential investors didn't really require a ton of money, I'm guessing. So don't let the fear of not having money stop you from pursuing an entrepreneurial venture or adventure, depending on how you look at it.
Great, thanks, Chuck. And Brian Slaywin happens to be on with us tonight. And Brian, I just promoted you to a panelist. Are you there? And can you turn on your mic?
I do happen to be here, and I can turn on my microphone.
How are you?
Hi, Mary. I've really enjoyed the conversation a lot.
Good.
What everyone is saying are the things that I would echo in terms of not necessarily being an entrepreneur and doing your own thing doesn't mean you can't be entrepreneurial and look for interesting solutions and resources and do something within the 9-to-5 world that you may occupy. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this panel discussion.
Great. So Brian, you've heard your name has come up a couple times here. And so we're talking to students who are in grades 8 through 12, right? So, I mean, as we're talking about people who are, they think they have an idea, they want to figure out whether or not they want to move forward, what advice would you give to them?
So the real challenge here is if you think you have an idea and you're in 8th grade, go do the idea. Like if it's building a rocket ship, well, don't start with one that goes to the moon, just learn how to build little small rockets that go up 100 feet and come back, right? I mean, do the thing. Don't wait for some money to show up or someone with the right credentials or the right whatever. Actually go do that thing. There was, I guess he was probably in 6th or 7th grade when I met him now 3 or 4 years ago, and he had a dog walking business. And I was fascinated by this young man. And I said, well, tell me about it. He goes, well, I walk dogs in my neighborhood for 25 cents a walk. I walk them in the morning and then I walk them in the evening. I said, okay, it was $1 a walk. Sorry. So, okay, that's cool. And he said, how many do you walk? He goes, I can walk about 5, but then they start to get too much. I'm like, okay, so you could make about $10 a day. It was like, yep. It's like, do you have dogs that you could walk, but you can't walk 6, 10, 20 dogs? Went, oh, absolutely. I said, well, can you hire like your friends and pay them 50 cents and you keep the 50 cents? And he was like, oh yeah. So he did that. And now he has a larger dog walking business, right? So you do like, if you have an idea, go do that idea. Don't let the circumstances stop you or the snow stop you or that whatever stop you. Go do that thing. Take those. We think of it in terms of crawl, walk, run. Take the little step, then take another little step, and suddenly, oh my gosh, I'm a mile away from where I started, and I've got a real thing here.
Great advice.
Minimal viable product is how.
Or in the case of dog walking, minimal dog product.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Brian, is that company open to investment?
Yeah.
I went in on the ground floor.
No kidding. He's making probably $20 or $30 a day.
That's awesome. Thank you for that. Brian, don't go anywhere. Nancy, I'm going to turn to you. Okay. So as an entrepreneur, what does a day in your life look like? And how has being an entrepreneur affected your family life?
Sure. So as I mentioned in my bio, in the introduction in the beginning, I do work a well, not really 9 to 5. It's whenever I work. I work at Canyon University and as an assistant professor. So I have my day job in a sense until I get home, and then I'm mom to my 5-year-old son. And then when he goes to bed, I get to be entrepreneurial president of Two Sparrows, Nancy Morris, with my husband. And we work on the business in the evening. And weekends and, before school. So, as far as affecting our life, it actually has been a positive effect. And so it's really become a business that envelops our family. We tell our story of who we are and what we do. And my son is involved in pecking out crayons, and he's involved in testing out products, on our marketplace. And he sees his parents working, multiple jobs and helping people and, doing interesting work and having their own company, having their own business. And he sees that. And we talk to him about, this is important. You're part of the business, you're part of our family, and someday you're going to inherit this. This is, going to be yours. And he's part of the company. And it's a very, I think it's been a really wonderful experience to have the family, have a family part of our company. And so something to kind of tie into our previous conversation, I want our students to understand that you can be an entrepreneur and you can have, almost two businesses or two jobs. You can have, you know, one job, and then you can also have your business. We run our business out of our living room, and we manufacture our crayons of the Masonic Temple. Chuck, there you go. There's our connection. We have, you know, and we used to manufacture them out of our house. And so it's, you know, it's something that it can be integrated in part of your life, and it can be a small part or, you know, a big part, but it can just be something that it's been very positive for our family.
Thank you. John, how about you? What's a day in your life look like, and how has it affected your family life?
Well, I'm still relatively close to being out of college. So, you know, I'm still trying to keep my expenses low. So I'm still with my parents. So that kind of makes things a little easy. But I really, with family, I have an awesome support network behind me. If I say, hey, can you go check a container for me? They're going to go run over and do a check for me and make sure everything's good. But I mean, yeah, it's awesome to, you know that I've got people behind me that are there. So.
Great, thank you. How about the rest of you? Does anyone else want to comment on that? Rob and Rebecca, you guys are very intertwined in a number of your businesses. What's that like?
Yeah, I think, I mean, Rob and I are actually probably polar opposites when it comes to many, many things. He's a little more financially risk adverse and I'm a little more financially risk proponent. And we oftentimes battle it out when we're talking about projects that we're working on collectively. But I think one of the key things that I wanted to point out was when I launched Room 33, and I wanted to make sure we built a company that was and empowered our team to run the company, right? I didn't want to have to be part of all the day in and day out operations. I wanted to create an environment where a team could come in and kind of create what they would like to see done too. So I had an idea. You know, Rob obviously had part of that idea, and then we executed it. But essentially, we wanted somebody else to kind of come in and take it over so that we could continue to move on into these different parts of our lives and continue to create opportunities. But I know that in my world, I like to create opportunities for other people. So that's kind of one of my ongoing missions as I continue to pursue different things. It's so that other people can step up, get in from the ground and learn and take it to where they want to take it too. So, and Rob, I don't know if you want to jump in on your end.
No, that's exactly, I agree for once.
Okay.
You know, and similar to Nancy, we have a 9-year-old, and we involve him in you know many of the decisions. You know, we don't necessarily let him come up with the final decision, but I think he's going to be quite formidable someday. Have this experience.
That's great.
Rebecca and Rob have really built something pretty unique, at least in my experience as an entrepreneur. One of the things that I think Chuck and I both see probably way too much is an entrepreneur who's not willing to give up a slice of the pie to grow the pie really big. They want to keep their arms wrapped around the whole pie, and they're going to squeeze it, and they're going to love it, and they're going to basically kill it if they don't figure out that it takes more than one person or 5 or 100 sometimes to grow a company of any import. The Lavery's, the Lavery Brewery, right? They said something a long time ago that has really stuck with me. And what they said was, we've built a company that supports our lives, not a life to support our company. And what that means is whenever it's time, whenever it's quitting time, they go. They bundle up themselves and off they go, and they're going to baseball games or soccer games, whatever they're doing. I think that's really important for entrepreneurs to understand, is that you are, maybe a vessel is the wrong word, but you are the impetus by which others can make a contribution. And you've got to set up the game to play exactly that way. If you started in the beginning where you're holding on to everything and squeezing it to death, well, that's exactly what's going to happen. Entrepreneurs really need to leverage the talents and skills and resources that their team has and build a really strong team.
Thanks, Brian. All right, Jason, I'm going to turn to you for a second now. What do you like most about being an entrepreneur? And conversely, what do you find the most challenging?
I like that I'm not doing the same thing all the time. It's not just about making the best product. There's so many skill sets. There's so many domains that you need to work in order to make the company successful, right? And I enjoy that. I enjoy, studying different things and coming up with different solutions in different areas. But I think the biggest challenge, and I enjoy a challenge, but I think that's the same thing in the challenge, that when you're straddling all these different kinds of tasks and all these different modes of thought, you're solving problems, or you're supporting your employees' efforts, their creative efforts, or you're adding your own creative efforts, or you're building things down to grow the company down the line. It can be very exhausting. It's very tiring, and that's a solution to our we solved our sleep problems, not just with the product itself, but we don't have much trouble sleeping nowadays.
That's great. How about some of the others? Do any of the others of you want to comment on that? What you like about it and what you find most challenging?
So I'll just jump in really quick. I think one of the things that I like about it is something that I haven't really fully captured yet, and that's just completely working for myself, right? One of the reasons I've become an entrepreneur is because I like having all the responsibility. Whether it's bad or it's good, I like to know at the end of the day, it falls on my shoulders and I'm responsible and I'll take ownership of it. But I'm still in a place where obviously I'm working for other companies and organizations, which are great. But I do think that's one of the advantages when you do have the opportunity to get into this arena and to become an entrepreneur, is that you really do get to take on all the decision-making, the ultimate decision-making, and also including your team in the process. And one of the things I find most challenging is when you first start up a company, such as I'm doing right now with Blind Tiger, with the Spirit-Free cocktails, is you have to navigate a system you don't really know. Even if you have some background in the arena, you have to learn a ton of things, and there's a huge learning curve there. And at times you get involved with other vendors or partners that aren't necessarily the right fit for you. And you still have to kind of be patient through the process and figure out what's best for you and the team moving forward. But it's also doing it in a way that keeps you going. So patience is really, I think, one of the biggest challenges of being an entrepreneur, because you want to see things move, you want to see progress, you want to see it on your own watch, but at times you're kind of held back by other people, and you have to trust that it's just going to work out, when it's supposed to.
Thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. One of the things I love is I get to make the decisions, and I get to have the direction for what I want to do and have ownership and control of the day in, the day out. And the things that are the most challenging is that I have all the ownership and control, and I have to make all the decisions, and I'm in charge of all of that. So it's what I love about having my own business, is also what is probably the most challenging, because everything does fall on your shoulders and it's your responsibility. So know that, even though it's something that you love, I still love it, but it's still hard, at the end of the day. So it's not easy, but it's okay if it's something that you feel passionate about.
Thank you. Okay, so Rob and Chuck, I have one last prepared question for you, and it is this. What have been the biggest keys to your success?
I think
go ahead, Rob.
I'll go quickly. I think for us, I mentioned it earlier, I believe, but it's, finding the customer, making them happy first, but also there's a give and take at all times. You have to do it in a way that, I could go out and make my customers really, really happy, right? Because I could do a bunch of work for them for very little amount of money, or I could charge them way too much and not deliver enough. So there's that balance that you have to figure out the right amount of effort and the right price, which will provide them something that makes them happy. But so the two important things: finding your customer, making them happy, but doing it in a way that can deliver profit to the business. Because in the end, that's the whole point.
Thanks, Rob. Chuck?
So I think that the key to the successes that I've had have been something you've heard, I think, everyone on this panel talk about, and that is the team. You cannot underestimate the value of your team. And a lot of times, if you're just starting out, it might be your family or your spouse. And as you grow and add those first employees, they become critical. And certainly, keeping the customer, as Rob said, happy is super important. And the best way that I've found, in my experience, the best thing that I've found to keeping those customers and clients happy is by having a really, really good team. And so I think it's the easy part for me has been, saying yes to AJ when he wanted to go into business, or finding real estate opportunities that might make sense. That's the easy part. The hard part is sustaining it by keeping your clients happy, and that requires a team. So that's been the real key to our success is knowing how important the team was.
Thanks, Chuck. Great. You guys have been so good. Thank you so much for doing this. We're going to wrap up now, but I'm going to ask you to respond rapid fire real quick to one question. And it is, if you could give young people one piece of advice who want to become entrepreneurs, what would that piece of advice be? And I'm going to call on you, Jason.
Yeah. I just finding those sources of information and listening to them. I learn how to just start building a Rolodex and see who's willing to help.
Great, thank you, John.
Watch your back, because you gotta keep moving forward no matter what. No one's really gonna protect you as much as really your instincts, but you gotta keep pushing forward, and you gotta keep that positive outlook.
Thanks, Nancy.
Being an entrepreneur is an exercise in resilience, and it is a marathon, not a race. And just keep going. It may not happen overnight or immediately. Not everything is like Shark Tank. So just keep going.
Okay, thank you. Rob.
Yeah, keep going. Don't let the negative. A million people will tell you no before the first one tells you yes. So, like Nancy said, resilience. Keep going and just be ready to work harder than anybody else.
Thank you. Rebecca?
Don't be afraid to share your ideas, because ideas are fundamentally different than execution. And if you're working on a project, I guarantee, and if you're worried about somebody stealing it from you, it takes so much more to actually get it out into the stratosphere. So actually by sharing your ideas, you're going to learn a lot more about the process as you go along.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, keep asking why not, how come, why is it that way? Don't pay attention to people who are older or wealthier, have a particular title. Be your own touchstone. Keep asking why not and why not me. And to Rob said, and basically everyone said, keep going forward, right? You'll find your point, but you just have to stay curious and keep asking the question, well, how come it isn't that way?
Okay. Thank you. Chuck?
So the world has got a ton of abundance, and there's opportunity all over the place. And I think that as I look at this panel and hear them speak, I realize that that's the way they see the world. There is opportunity there is a lot of interesting things and ideas that you can move forward on. And so to young folks in particular that are listening to all of us talk about this, try to open your eyes to that abundance. I think that that you can get your piece of that if you work hard for it, and if you you look at the world from that perspective.
Thank you. Again, everyone, thank you so much for being part of this discussion. And Brian, thanks for letting me elevate you to a panelist, even though you didn't know you were going to be part of this tonight. We really appreciate you all tonight, and the words of wisdom that you shared are really valuable. So thank you. We would like to get audience feedback on tonight's session. So soon I'll be sending out a brief survey to get participants' thoughts, and we hope you take a couple of minutes to complete it. And that's it for us tonight. Again, thank you for being here, and have a great rest of your evening. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.